All right, let's talk about hunger. A vivid demonstration of the supremacy of physiological needs comes from a starvation experience in World War II prison camps. David Mandel was a Nazi concentration camp survivor, and he recalled how a starving father and son would fight over a piece of bread like dogs. And one father, whose 20-year-old son stole his bread from under his pillow while he slept, went into a deep depression, asking over and over how his son could do such a thing. And the next day, the father died. Hunger does something to you that's hard to describe. And that's a quote from David Mendel, the guy that was the Nazi concentration camp survivor. So let's talk about what is hunger. A.L. Washburn was a psychologist, and he was working with a guy named Walter Cannon. And what Washburn did was intentionally swallow a balloon. And when he inflated this balloon to fill his stomach, the balloon transmitted his stomach contractions to a recording device. And while his stomach was being monitored, Washburn pressed a key each time he felt hungry. And the discovery was that Washburn was indeed having stomach contractions whenever he felt hungry. So would hunger persist without stomach pains? To answer that question, some researchers removed rats' stomachs and attached their esophagi to their small intestines. And did they continue to eat? Of course they did. Some hunger persists similarly in humans whose ulcerated or cancerated stomachs have been removed. If the pains of an empty stomach are the only source of hunger, then what else matters? Well, although the stomach's pangs contribute to hunger, variations in body chemistry are more important. So increases in the hormone insulin diminish blood glucose. And they do this by partly covering or converting it to body fat. We do not consciously feel this change in blood chemistry. Rather, our body's internal state is monitored by the hypothalamus. And this regulates the body's weight as it influences our feelings of hunger and fullness. Orexin, this word right here, is a hunger-triggered hormone that's secreted by the lateral hypothalamus. And other hormones are monitored by the hypothalamus as well, the ventromedial hypothalamus. And they monitor hormones such as ghrelin, which is secreted by an empty stomach, obistatin, which is secreted by a full stomach, leptin, which is secreted by fat cells, right here, and PYY, which is a digestive tract hormone. Activity in the lateral hypothalamus, which is the sides of the hypothalamus, brings on hunger. Activity in the ventromedial hypothalamus, which is the lower mid hypothalamus, depresses hunger. And some researchers have abandoned the idea that the body has a precise set point, which is a biologically fixed tendency to maintain an optimum weight. And they prefer the term settling point to indicate an environmentally and biologically influenced level at which weight settles in response to caloric input and expenditure. Human bodies regulate weight through the control of food intake, energy output, and basal metabolic rate. And this is the body's resting rate of energy expenditure. Our preferences for sweet and salty tastes are genetic and they're universal. Other taste preferences are conditioned. Culture can also affect your taste. For example, Bedouins enjoy eating the eye of a camel, while most North Americans would find that repulsive. Most North Americans also shun dog, rat, and horse meat, all of which are prized elsewhere. With repeated exposure, our appreciation for a new taste typically increases, and exposure to one set of novel foods increases willingness to try others. Some of our taste preferences, like the avoidance of foods that have made us ill, have survival value. And I'm sorry, I was making sure that I had the right word or term for this word. But yeah, neophobia is the dislike of things unfamiliar. And this was surely adapted for our ancestors, which protected them from potentially toxic substances. Let's talk about some eating disorders. We eat more when we're eating with others, and this is called social facilitation. And in addition, the size of food portions, which are called unit basis, and even of bowls, plates, and eating utensils affects how much we eat. So society has a lot to do with our eating habits. Anorexia nervosa is an eating disorder in which a normal weight person, usually an adolescent female, diets to become significantly, which means 15% or more, underweight. Yet they still feel fat and is obsessed with losing weight. Bulimia nervosa is an eating disorder that's characterized by private binge purge episodes of overeating, usually of high-calorie foods, followed by vomiting, laxative use, fasting, or excessive exercise. Binge eating disorder is marked by significant binge eating episodes followed by remorse, but not by purging, fasting, or excessive exercise. A national study funded by the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health reports that at some point during their lifetime, 0.6% of people meet the criteria for anorexia, 1% for bulimia, and 2.8% for binge eating disorder. So how can we explain them? Eating disorders do not provide us a telltale sign of childhood sexual abuse. However, the family environment may provide a fertile ground for the growth of eating disorders in other ways. Mothers of girls with eating disorders tend to focus on their own weight and on their daughter's weight and appearance. Families of bulimia patients have a higher than usual incidence of childhood obesity and negative self-evaluation. And families of anorexia patients tend to be competitive, high-achieving, and very protective. So again, in these disorders, challenging family settings and weight-obsessed societal pressures overwhelm the homeostatic drive to maintain a balanced internal state. And those most vulnerable to eating disorders are usually are also those, like usually women, who most idealize thinness and have the greatest body dissatisfaction. Low self-esteem and negative emotions that interact with stressful life experiences are additional contributing factors. Twin studies suggest that eating disorders may also have a genetic component. So let's talk about obesity and weight control. Fat is an ideal form of stored energy. It is a high-calorie fuel reserve that can carry the body through periods of famine. And in fact, where people face famine, obesity signals affluence and society status. However, the tendency to eat energy-rich fat or sugar becomes dysfunctional in a world of easily accessible food. And you combine that with a lack of exercise, the abundance of high-calorie food has led to higher rates of obesity, and this raises the risk of illness and shortens the life expectancy. Worldwide, the World Health Organization, or WHO, in 2007 said that more than 1 billion people are overweight and 300 million of them are clinically obese. And the definition of obesity by the WHO is a body mass index of 30 or more. In the United States, the adult obesity rate has more than doubled in the last 40 years, reaching 34%, and the child-teen obesity has quadrupled. Australia classifies 54% of its population as overweight or obese, with Canada close behind at 49% and France at 42%. In all of these and other countries, rising obesity rates trail the American rates by just a few years and are projected to increase further, resulting in what the WHO calls a global epidemic of diabetes. And so anything above a 30. Obesity affects both how you are treated and how you feel about yourself. Obese people, especially obese women, experience weight discrimination in job hiring, placement, promotion, compensation, and discharge. Similarly, they experience bias in searching for a romantic relationship and experience lower psychological well-being. So this is a chart that shows willing employees' willingness to hire. So women are less likely to be hired if they're overweight, and so are men. Although genes influence body weight, they do not determine it. Some people are genetically predisposed to have more and larger fat cells than others, but in an obese person, the original fat cells double or triple in size and then divide or trigger nearby immature fat cells to divide. And this results in up to 75 billion fat cells. Once the number of fat cells increases, it never decreases. People tend to also differ in their resting metabolic rates, and once someone gains fat tissue, less energy is needed to maintain that tissue than is needed to maintain other tissue. So unquestionably, environmental factors like sleep loss, social influence, and often eating high-calorie foods, living a sedentary lifestyle, these things matter, as comparisons of similar people from different generations or different locations tell us. Research indicates that most people who succeed in a weight loss program, this guy right here, lost a bunch of weight, eventually regain it most of the time. Here he is again, even bigger than he was originally. Those who wish to diet should set realistic goals, minimize exposure to food cues, boost energy expenditure through exercise, eating healthy food spaced throughout the day, and be aware of the binge, and make a lifelong change in eating patterns. And that's it. Thanks, guys.